checking and making sure that all the technical details are in order. So please let me know. Can you hear me? And am I sitting according to the laws of gravity, or am I hanging off the wall? Is my head on the floor? Whatever. I just want to make sure that everything is good. We did our best to iron out the problems we had last meeting to see if I have any responses coming in, because I want to make sure that we're on and we're good. So I hope you can hear me. It's a little bit of a rainy day here today, and I was a little bit worried actually if this live would actually work out, because I live under a metal roof. Can you see me? Can you hear me? Do we have, okay, let's plug the mic in, see if this works. It says it's on. Good morning, everyone. We thought we had all the details ironed out. We ran into something new, but we're on now. I want to make sure, can you hear me? And I'm looking upright. You can see my face in the direction it's supposed to be. I'm not hanging off the wall or feet up in the air or anything like that. Good. Okay. So, nice to see you all again.
Good morning, everyone. We started at 11 as we promised, but boy, I had again this error from the YouTube app, and I thought that I lost everything. But anyway, it worked out well. Eventually, it's a rainy day. We hope it's not going to be too noisy, and we have some announcements to make, but we will save them for the end of this meeting together here. So Amy will just start answering your questions, and I will be at the computer to look at your comments and try to respond onto or to pass to Amy any of your further questions.
Good morning again. I didn't make it through even half the questions from last time, so I'm hoping to be able to get through all of the questions from this week and then keep working through the older questions and catch up on them, because I had about a month's worth before we started this live project. Excuse me. So the first question, actually a number of you pointed this out and caught me, and I was so grateful, because but somebody named Tengiz says, "Hi Amy, I think you misspoke when you said the Falklands War was 1892. Did you mean 1982? Yes, I did. And I didn't even hear myself saying 1892. I read 1982 and I thought I spoke it, but my mind wasn't paying attention to the numbers. I'm sorry for the confusion. It is 1982. I did say that right, 1982. And that was my spoonerism of the week. And so, my apologies. Helen Spalding says, now that you've reviewed 8 songs that are under the umbrella of the rock genre, do you have a better idea of how huge and varied that genre really is? What do you have to look forward to? And are you surprised by how good a lot of these songs are? And I guess I have to say, yes, I had no clue, really, what the rock genre encompassed. And I have to say that I've been pleasantly surprised to find that a lot of the music has a lot of beauty in it that I was not expecting. I guess my concept of rock was more that it was along the lines of metal. I didn't really distinguish between those two. I didn't know there was something to distinguish. So yes, I don't enjoy everything I've listened to, but a lot of it is really lovely, and I'm looking forward to seeing what else is out there. I keep reading your comments and seeing that you're saying go to the 60s, the 70s, and do more of the classics. I am on my way there, and I'm looking forward to finding more and more of this music. Omar Dominic says, are there any songs you've reacted to that you now listen to just for enjoyment? Have any of these made your playlists? I guess I haven't put any of them on my playlist yet, because each one I've reacted to, I've thrown myself into it for several days and just kind of lived in that world. And when I do that with a piece of music, I always feel like I need a break from it afterwards. I need to step back and breathe away from it, whether it's classical or rock or anything else. It's just the way I handle it. And so there are some which will probably end up being music that I return to in the future, but I've only been doing this for what, 5-6 weeks or something like that, and it's been a pretty intense process because every week, every few days, I'm pushing myself into another one, and it'll be a while before it really starts to settle and I start to feel like, yes, I would like to hear this one. But I do expect there to be some that I respond that way in the long term. Wanda James says, do you only listen to the safe stuff, or are you more adventurous into songs that are more controversial? Well, I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that. Safe meaning musical style, or safe meaning subject matter? I guess I haven't even thought about safety or not. I have gone into it completely blind. I've trusted Vlad to screen the music coming in, the requests, and to help guide me and say, okay, this should be your next listen, or it's okay if you listen to this one. So he's kind of my screen because I don't know this repertoire. But I haven't really been thinking of it in terms of safe or not. I don't know what else to say about that question. But if you have any further clarifications or what you're asking, let me know. Peter Bowen says, will you listen to the Beatles again? Absolutely, I will. I'm sure I'll be returning to them more than once, because as so many of you have said, they are a really important moment in the development of rock music, even though some of you say they're not really rock themselves, or maybe they are, maybe they're not. But obviously, they're a huge influence, and I should become more familiar with it. So I'll be returning to Beatles music many times in the future. A.G. Katsivalis? I don't know how to say your screen name, I'm sorry. Says, do you feel like you've learned anything new about music as a whole while discovering rock music? That's an interesting question. Anything new about music as a whole? I guess I can't say that there have been any groundbreaking, revolutionary, new things that I've learned, because I feel like this music is music, and music as a whole is music, and there are so many things that are, I mean, if it's music, right? But I am learning to appreciate different sounds. I am learning to appreciate different ways of expressing ideas musically. And so it's not like I've learned a new thing that I could name. But my understanding is certainly broadening and developing. Here's another question from Oraj O. Says, as you mentioned the topic of an organ, which is actually probably a synthesizer, you're probably right. I think in terms of acoustic instruments, so when I hear something organ-like, I say organ. I'm curious if during the musical education, are classical musicians taught anything about sound theory? And then he goes on to clarify what he means by sound theory. Not musical theory, but a part of physics acoustics, what makes the instrument or voice sound the way it does, which includes things like sound spectrum, envelope, frequency range, dynamic range, all of these things. I think it depends a lot on what type of music education you pursued and what your main focus was. Everyone is going to have a basic concept of some of that, but especially when it gets into he went, I'm not going to read the whole paragraph, it's very long. He went on to talk about how a lot of this modern music is not just the singers and the instrumentalists, but it's the production factor that makes the end product be what it is. And that is true. And some of us don't have a lot of knowledge in that production factor. We kind of, when we go in to do a recording or something like that, we rely a lot on the sound engineer, the recording engineer, the ones who are experts in that field. That's not to say that we don't have some basic idea of these concepts. And I think some of us who pursue a track that takes us more in the modern music direction, if you start dealing with an electric instrument like electric harp or electric guitar, I have friends who play electric harp. You definitely, there is a set of skills and knowledge which are much more highly developed and become a much bigger part of your creation of music and your awareness of the process and the end design. Michael Power says, why do you think that it is wrong to assess the music independently of the lyrics? And he was referencing something I said in one of the videos that I did. I didn't mean to give the impression, Michael, that it's wrong to assess music independently. In fact, I think it's very valuable to do so. And if you go back and look through some of my videos, you'll see that sometimes I do assess the music without any reference to the lyrics. In fact, my earliest videos, I was really separating music, lyrics, interpretation very, very rigidly. I've kind of blended them more together in my more recent first listens and explorations of the music. Part of it is because I'm trying to figure out how the best way is to experience this music for the first time, where I should be focusing. It's not wrong to separate every element. It's very important and educational and revealing. But I'm still learning to find my way, and that kind of changes things a little bit sometimes. And maybe some pieces I will lean more one direction, and maybe some I will lean more the other. I think it depends a lot on what I discover and how my impressions direct me. Another question from Helen Spalding. Could you start a music theory course online for beginners? That's an interesting question because it's been one of my ideas for years to start some online courses for beginners. Theory, ear training, even some instrumental like beginning piano or beginning harp. I have sketched out some ideas and probably at some point I will. I don't feel like I'm in a position to do it right now with everything else that I have going on in my life. But if you're really truly wanting some instruction on something, I did set up a link in the Ko-fi page where you can basically buy a lesson time from me for to work on a subject of your choice. If you want a theory lesson, I'm happy to give you a theory lesson or a series of theory lessons. This is what I do every day in my work. And, everything from young children, 4 years old, on up to retired adults. I work with the whole range. And I'd be delighted to work with you if you are interested. Nicholas Juarez, I won't say the whole name, I'm not solid enough on my Spanish, says, I understand now why I didn't know this song. It was prohibited here in Argentina. The question is, do you know something about Argentinian music? And he goes on talking about Argentina's rock music and so on and so forth. And my answer is, I do know something about Argentinian classical music. Argentina actually gave the world some very gifted, outstanding composers and conductors and musicians. And I wanted to name one of them, Ginastera, which he was a composer, and we harpists are very grateful to him because he wrote a harp concerto, which is very exciting and has a lot of the Argentinian rhythms in it, but it's classical. If you want to check it out, just type in Alberto Ginastera harp concerto on YouTube, you'll find it, and it's a lot of fun. As far as the 20th century rock music, I haven't gotten there yet. I have so much to explore. I'm sure probably I will end up checking something out from there at some point, but I have this vast world to discover, and it's going to take me quite a while to work my way through it, so I can't say it'll be next month or next year, or I don't know at what point I will hear an Argentinian rock band. Andy U says, hi, when you're at 12:50 or so, am I the only one hearing the first four notes of a Viennese waltz, the Blue Danube? You're not the only one. Those are the exact intervals, perhaps not in the same key, but the same little melody that you hear starting the Blue Danube waltz. And it's a fun thing. Your ears are picking out little elements, and it's fun to see how many of them show up in so many different places. And it brings up this bigger question of, is there anything original in music? And I saw some of you saying about some pieces, they're just copying somebody else, or it's hard to balance originality. It's hard to judge originality with just boring copying. And it's true that because I'm unfamiliar with this genre, some of the pieces I listen to, I might think are unique when actually they may be very, very standard and cliche. And it's simply because I don't know how many of them like that are out there. But on the other hand, we should remember that some of the greatest artists copy and incorporate so much from others who came before. And it's not necessarily a shameful thing. It doesn't mean you don't have creativity or you don't have artistic merit. It's how you handle the material, really. And do you have something meaningful to say through it? And is it something that adds to the musical conversation? And or that meets or fulfills a certain experience or need. So I am reluctant to say that because somebody copied something, it's not original. But it's fun to notice, where are things copied from? What was the inspiration? And how did this person reshape and articulate something perhaps further developed, or perhaps entirely different from the same material? John Van Loopy, would you consider buying an electric guitar? I'd love to see if you could engage with the expressiveness of this piece or any composition. Oh boy. I I don't know how to play guitar at all. I have a very good longtime friend who is a classical guitarist. I've tried playing classical guitar and it messes with my brain so much. I could sit down and learn it, but it would be starting from scratch and working my way up step by step to even get myself oriented to the instrument. And probably it would be the same way with electric guitar as well, because they're kind of at least the same design. I have so many harps and pianos and other things right now. I don't have room to buy an electric guitar, but I have been in touch with somebody who is going to, at some point, give me a sort of intro to the electric guitar session. And I hope to record that so you can all watch me explore and discover more about the instrument from somebody who's a master of the instrument. So that's the best I can give you at this point about that. What do you think about a possible connection of Brothers in Arms to Chopin's Funeral March by Hilmar Hochmann? Asked that question. I'm not sure what connection you're hearing, and I'm very curious to hear more about what it is that you are thinking of, because they are obviously both quite somber pieces of music, and they both are very much reach deep into you, into me. But I don't know exactly what you're talking about connection. Are you hearing some melodic connection, some harmonic connection? Do you think that there's an inspiration of? Do you think that the Chopin's Funeral March is inspiring Brothers in Arms? I don't know. I didn't find any of that myself, but I am open to having something pointed out to me, and I'd love to hear it, or love to hear more of what you're thinking in that regard. Yang says, do any of the pieces you've listened to so far remind you of classical pieces? Do these pieces conjure up in your mind similar atmospheres, feelings, etc.? Maybe an idea for your channel would be drawing these links. Well, if you look through my second videos, not the first listen and reaction, but the second half, where I have taken a few days to dig deeper into the music, you will find that very often, maybe not 100% of the time, but most of the time, I include a reference to something with which I'm already familiar. The last one I did, which I just put up last night, I had this whole list of links underneath of classical pieces that have similar elements mixed in them that you might find in that rock piece. Actually, it was metal. That was the King Diamond. So I think if you look through my videos, you'll find that I am linking and looking for connections, because that's the way we learn. That's the way we find anchors to kind of give ourselves a way to explore something even further out. There has to be some sort of connection to what it is that we know. Otherwise, we kind of get lost and don't know how to relate. That doesn't mean that I'm relating only in terms of classical or trying to make this over into classical, but definitely it's a great way for all of us, myself to expand my experience, and those of you who aren't so classically immersed as me, to expand your experience. And I hope that we all find some new favorites along the way. And Helen Spalding says, what do all these acronyms after your name refer to? So they're just, as you said, professional acronyms. The FRSM is short for Fellow of the Royal Schools of Music. That's a diploma that they give for a certain level of academic achievement. Then there's the LRSM, which is Licentiate of the Royal Schools of Music. That's another diploma they give. And the last one, RYC, is Restore Your Core, which is one of the movement modalities in which I'm trained for restorative movement and therapy which is where I get my connection to my training for helping to build healthy movements in playing and technique and that sort of thing. So those are the acronyms up there. I have others, but I don't like to put a long string after my name, so I just put 3 most important ones and left it at that. John Madden says, rock music and songs very often are inspired by personal stories of philosophies which can make understanding them difficult. Classical music does not seem to very often have or even allow for this personal element. Is this a misapprehension? I would say yes and no. In classical music, especially some of the long-standing traditional forms like sonata form and dance forms and that sort of thing, they're formal structures within which a composer works, and they don't have a lot of personal, don't always have a lot of room for building a personal story. That doesn't mean you can't find it within. An interesting one would be Beethoven's Emperor Concerto, where he originally conceived it as being a celebration of Napoleon and Napoleon's victories and so on and so forth. And he had great admiration for Napoleon. And it was his sort of political statement in that way, in that day and age. And then when Napoleon ended up doing things that Beethoven felt completely betrayed the trust it put in him, Beethoven got so upset he tore up the title page and said, you know, it was just devastating to him. Eventually it ended up being titled The Emperor rather than the Napoleon, and got a more general term. So you do find personal philosophies and stories and experiences built into the music, but perhaps not so overtly, because a lot of the classical music is built off of concepts of creating a balanced work of art. One of the other pieces that I linked to in The King Diamond, I put the link below, is one of Shostakovich's symphonies, and it's the one he wrote in commemoration, in reference to Stalin, and I debated whether to put it up there or not, because it's not specifically saying that it's dealing with death or hell or something like that, like the others were so overtly so. This one was in regard to Stalin. But if you listen to it, it's hard to come up with any other idea of what he was saying other than that it was a really horrible time. And so you do find them, but you might have to dig a little bit more deeply to figure out what's going on. So those are the questions I collected from this week. And now I'd love to go back and go through some of the list of questions which I have not yet answered from previous weeks. So let's go to some other musical questions. Someone says, Eberhard Kraus says, would you agree with the statement that Till has a classical baritone voice? And I guess what you're asking is, what is his range and how would we categorize it? And in classical music, we do tend to have these categories of there's bass, there's baritone, there's tenor, alto, soprano, which for some voices is called treble or countertenor, or there's mezzo-soprano, and then of course we get into these other designations. Is it a dramatic voice or a lyric voice, and all of those different things. In general, his range does sound rather baritone to me, but I didn't hear a lot of his voice, meaning he didn't sing in a wide range, so I don't know really what the full potential of that voice is. But Probably baritone. Another question from Helen. Helen, I love all your questions. They're so interesting, and I enjoy reading them. Says, as part of your research, are you at all interested in interviews with the artist? Or are you concentrating strictly on the song itself? And then she goes on to clarify that there are some interviews of a certain artist available on YouTube. And I would say, yes, I am interested, but first I am trying to find out what I find myself. And so, of course, what you're seeing with these videos that I put up is my first exposure and the few days afterwards, where I'm kind of challenging myself to see how much can I find myself without digging into too much, because the research can go on for days and weeks and months, and you know, it can grow. And if I were going to be performing one of these pieces, I would be taking that process. So I guess I would say I am interested, and I would love to watch some of them, but I probably won't be doing so in the time frame with which I've set for myself to prepare these and then get into it. Maybe if I run across something quickly enough, but I'm not spending a lot of time digging down into the rabbit holes that could be followed. Omar Dominic, I'm curious if you like this or any of the previous songs enough that you will listen to them again. I guess that kind of goes back to the same question I answered earlier. Will any of these make my playlist? I'm sure some of them will, but they haven't yet. Mojo Rider. I'm not well versed in music theory, but is the chord progression then a 1-5-4-3 that assumes that D minor is the tonic chord? I guess this came from, I forget which song this came from. Anyway, but one of the ones that I was going through the chords. And I remember I looked at the song, and yes, you are correct. That's how we named those chords. It can get more complicated than that, but as far as a basic start, you're on track. Micah Vandam. Oh, I guess I read this one last time. How do I, as a former rock hater? Yes, more like didn't know rock. I did read that one last time, so I won't repeat it now. And Lee Kennison is asking, I was wondering if you have had difficulty finding sheet music for your analysis videos. I noticed a couple of videos you were using guitar tab rather than standard notation. I've basically been using whatever sheet music I can come up with without having to spend a fortune on it. Some of them are copyrighted and they want a good sum of money, and I'm not spending money on that right now. Some of them I've even struggled to find any sheet music other than perhaps a piano reduction. But what I'm doing is I'm not just relying on the sheet music. I'm using that to kind of double check and kind of fast track my assessment, but I'm using my ears also as I'm going through in the days following my first listen. I sit down and I use my ears and I figure out what it is that I'm hearing. What chords am I hearing? How is it working within the music? So I haven't felt crippled by not having perhaps a full score, but it just depends on what I find that's available. Charlie Hayden says, I'm curious how you would count the beats during the triumphant part just before the solo. I feel like everyone has their own interpretation. Again, I'm sorry, Charlie, but it's been a while since this question was asked, and I don't know which song you're referring to here. But I would say that probably I didn't pay much attention to the options of how the different ways those beats could be counted in whatever piece that was. If you want to clarify, I'd be happy to look into it and answer your question in more detail. Danny Hancock, how have you found the comparison of rock drums to classical percussion? I guess I would say rock drums have a whole lot more sound variety than what I'm accustomed to in an orchestral set of percussion instruments. And with classical percussion, I'm used to hearing timpani, cymbals, and then of course the other like xylophone, bells, triangle, those sorts of things. We don't have so much of the crash bang hit stuff. And I don't mean that in a disparaging way. I'm just trying to find a quick way to describe it. And they don't have so many. Rock drums have more percussive sounds that are not so pitch specific, meaning I don't notice a particular note that the note is being struck as much as I notice a certain sound quality, a certain texture, I guess I could say. And so that is something that my ears are still adjusting to and still learning how to relate to, because obviously it's a broad palette which has room for so much, but because it's new, I'm still figuring out what the potential, what the capacity, and how to understand what it is that I'm hearing. Because I am used to hearing much more pitch-specific sounds. Pregian Alliance? Do you think it is more annoying or complementary when rock and metal bands tend to use classical trappings as a flavor that isn't executed on? I know I tend to find it annoying when other genres use rock stings and samples. I guess this was probably either written on the Nightwish or the Metallica link. And I think it depends on how it's used. Again, I feel like music is music in a broad sense. But of course, each genre has its own flavors, its own techniques, its own language in a way, as color, sound, world. I think one of the things that we as artists like to avoid is a cliche expression. Just because something has been used a lot doesn't mean it has to be cliche. But when you find a piece of music that seems like it's just pulling musical cliches and applying them to say something, it doesn't really strike me as really interesting. And that brings me back to the whole Nightwish Ghost Love score experience, where yes, I was expecting something different, but I don't think it was only that made me feel so let down by it. I felt like what I was hearing was very cliche. Now, of course, that means that, well, that's me coming from a classical background. And the classical elements which I heard weren't particularly used in a way that made me feel like they had something worth saying of their own. Maybe the reason it's different is because those musical linguistic elements don't feature so strongly in rock. And so maybe it sounds fresh and new to a lot of ears. Just like when I did the At the Graves this past week, I was hearing things in there that I was like, oh, cool, they're using that. All right. But some of you have come back and said, well, it sounds like more of the same that we hear all the time. So again, I'm not familiar enough in the rock world to know, is this really cliche or is it not? But when I hear something used, some classical reference that doesn't seem to have a lot of its own content to offer, or that seems to be just a repetition of what I've heard all the time, without anything fresh added to it, it doesn't hold my attention. So I wouldn't say it's annoying or complimentary. I think it depends on how it's used. And does the creator, the artist, the composer, the songwriter, the band, do they have something meaningful to give of their own through whatever medium they choose? And are we as listeners able to pick up on it? Martin de Koning on Onadich says, what do you think of the singing style in this song? It's one of the things that has always kept me away from this kind of music, since metal singers all sing like this, and they get on my nerves once they start singing. That question interested me, Martin, because I thought the singing was fairly natural and pleasant. It didn't sound awkward or harsh or ugly for no particular reason. I'm not saying that ugly is always bad, but I want to have a reason for it to be ugly if I'm going to listen to ugly. It sounded quite natural to me. So I have to say I enjoyed that voice, perhaps more than I enjoyed some of the others. Definitely more than I've enjoyed some of the other voices I've listened to in this journey to date. And I would love to hear if you can expand a bit more on what it is that you're hearing that bothers you. Do you like higher voices? Do you like smoother voices? Do you like more aggressive voices? I'm curious what it is that bothers you about this voice, because I find that fascinating. Shannon Briscoe says, how does playing piano compare to the harp? I know a lot of guitarists that play piano well because they translate quite equally. Or is it a whole different set of skills needed? Well, okay, so piano and harp, also guitar, also organ, also harpsichord, are all what we call harmony instruments. Within those, the guitar, the piano, the harpsichord are keyboard instruments, and the guitar and the harp are plucked string instruments. So that means that there are certain qualities, characteristics about how they're played, which are similar. Now, harp and piano have a lot of similarities because you're dealing with, chords and multiple notes being played at once, either this way or this way. And if you get into the technique theory, deeply into the technique theory, then of course, it's so similar because you could say that playing piano is exactly like playing violin in terms of how the body systems work. We're just putting them in different positions and angles because of the instrument we're working with. But on the other hand, when you get down to it, there are a lot of differences too. Some people feel like harp is much harder to play than piano. I would say that piano is easier to pick up in an amateurish way. But I'm inclined to say that playing piano really well is very much on par with playing harp really well. The nice thing about both of the instruments is that they sound pretty decent even if you don't know anything about it. You can go pick a string, pluck a note, pluck a string, peck a note. And the sound comes out quite nicely. Whereas on violin, you're likely to get this horrendous screech that doesn't sound good to anybody's ears. And in that way, they're similar as well. I don't know if I've answered your question. They're similar and they're different. But anyway, that's how it is. Mikko Rantalainen. What do you consider the most important part of a song or piece? Is it the melody, chord selections, arrangement, vocal parts, technical ability of the players or singers, or something totally different? Everything is important. A lot depends on the where the piece is focusing as to what we want to highlight. In other words, is the depth of the piece found in the harmonies? Then we want to highlight that to the listener. That doesn't mean that the rest doesn't matter. But if that's where the interest is happening, then as a performer, we want that to be brought to the listener's attention. If it's in a vocal line, we want that to be brought to the listener's attention. And very often it shifts from one moment to the next, whether it's harmony, melody, two parts playing together, a rhythmic element, and sometimes it's many things all at once. And we want to balance and figure out how can we bring the listener into this and help them to hear and follow us, come with us along this journey, this musical journey, so that they can experience all the wealth that is in this music. So I guess what I would say is probably the most important thing is knowing the music. If you know the music and then can communicate and share the music, I would say that is the most important thing. Amu Amanda, what in your opinion makes musical piece exquisite, and more importantly, why? Is an exquisite piece always also beautiful, or could it be somewhat disturbing? Is it exquisite only if it is demanding for the listener? What an interesting set of questions, and really that gets deep into things. But I guess each of those questions could be answered yes and yes and yes. Exquisite is something, for something to be exquisite, well, you want it to match up with what the word is, with the meaning, the definition of the word. And perhaps some of us will feel something is exquisite and others won't. But most often, just as we can admire an exquisite piece of jewelry or something like that, we all understand generally what we mean by that, and we can admire it. It could be beautiful, it could be somewhat disturbing. I don't think it has to be demanding for the listener. I think it can be very easy for the listener as well. So that's my answer for that. I'm going through all these questions. I want to check with Vlad and see if there are any questions coming in.
It's okay.
It's okay? All right.
I try to keep it up.
Yeah, okay. And now I want to switch to maybe some unique, fun questions, because I have a collection of those I've been gathering too, and I've been going through a lot of the serious musical stuff. I don't want this to get too heavy and boring. Let's see here. Give me just a second to pull out the list. Oh, there is a question. I just remembered it, and I don't know exactly where it is, but somebody asked, what can we do about this wobbly little table? And it will change when I get another table. For now, I sit very gingerly and try not to have a catastrophe. At some point, I should make a little video of the setup that we do. I think you'd all have fun with that. But anyway, I do know the table needs addressing. Somebody else said, I'm so sorry I didn't hear anything you said in your intro, because I was trying to figure out if your monitor was touching the case or free floating. Probably that was the little monitor screen that Vlad put in front of the iPad so you could see the video. But anyway, I thought that was fun. Somebody, A2ZME, says, have you ever seen the Beverly Hillbillies? It was very popular back in the 60s. I've seen little clips of it. One of my younger siblings went through this Beverly Hillbillies phase, and so we had Beverly Hillbillies playing off of YouTube in the house quite a while. But I haven't actually sat down and watched it. So says the point of this comment is that there's one cast member, Jane Hathaway, the secretary of the bank manager, that has to deal with all the crazy shenanigans of the Clampetts, and you look exactly like her. Her name was Nancy Culp. Well, I guess I don't know the show well enough. I might have to go watch an episode just to see, what do I look like? Here's a question coming in. Richard J says, Amy, have you ever played a harp electronically through an amp and through effects pedals? I guess I have touched a few strings on a harp that's electronic harp, because I know somebody who that's all they do is jazz and electronic harp stuff, and they do amazing with it. And I guess once when we were together at the same event, he let me try out some of the strings, but that was a long time ago, and I was kind of timid about it, and I don't think that I really, and we were pressed for time, so I didn't get to really sit down and explore. But that's something I'll probably do next time I run into an opportunity. David Gianotti says, having listened to The Wall for the last 34 years and having sung plain chant for the last 20, today I learned that the verse phrasing of Hey You follows the melodic rules of Gregorian chant. Yes, it does. And you caught exactly what it was that I was looking at in there. It's really interesting, isn't it, how you can have something from a different world, a different time, and then find it fresh and new in something like Hey You. And they even sound so different. They're doing different things. They have different purposes and intentions. It's fascinating to me. And I guess that's what I'm saying. That's what I mean when I say it doesn't have to be cliche to use something old. Yes. Isaac Vale says, I heard somewhere that wine experts enjoy it more than the average person because they have the vocabulary. Oops. Sorry. Got a call interrupting. I turned it off. Because they have the vocabulary to express what they taste. It actually enhances their experience. I feel like I have a better vocabulary to enjoy even more music that I already love. Such an interesting comment, and I'm so glad that my little journey is enhancing your journey, and that we can enjoy growing together. And it also brings up something else, which I've seen some comments reference to, saying, you need to sit down and just listen to the music and enjoy it for what it is before you try to dig in and analyze. And they feel like I'm missing an experience by taking the approach I do. I remember as a student, I was learning all of this technical terminology and learning how to listen for different things, developing my ears to be able to identify certain sounds, and it was very technical and it was very intense. And I remember some occasions where I would listen to a piece that I had listened to as a younger child, and I couldn't shut off the analytical activity that I had been learning and cultivating. And I remember thinking, I almost missed the old way of listening to music. And wasn't sorry. It was just so interesting to me to notice how, as my understanding developed, my way of hearing changed also. I am actually able to mostly shut off that analytical side if it's a very good piece of music. If it's boring, I can't shut it off. It's impossible. It's kind of my way of entertaining. But I do think that what Isaac said here is beautiful. And I guess that is our goal as musicians. It's our goal to understand and appreciate music as fully as possible. And it's important for us not to get so hung up on technicalities as to miss the experience that goes along with it. And I hope that what I'm doing here helps you all to enjoy and doesn't inhibit your ability to just immerse yourself and enjoy. I don't think it will, because really, if I can do it, you can do it too. But it's different ways of consuming. You're right. It's different ways of enjoying and different ways of experiencing. And just like if we don't know what we're feeling, if we don't have words to express what we're feeling, our feelings are often confused and we feel kind of pent up. As soon as a child learns to say, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling scared, it helps them process their experience and experience it even more fully. And I think that's what we're after here. Milpy X says, do you play the theremin? I've tried the theremin, and I'm not a theremin player, but it's a fun, weird instrument, isn't it? And Josh Goldstein says, how do you consume music normally? It varies a lot. Sometimes I'm hardly consuming music because I'm so busy creating, practicing, preparing, and helping others prepare and create. And then I start to notice I'm living in this desert of, I haven't heard a good piece of music start to finish for such a long time. And it's so refreshing to sit down and just immerse myself in some wonderful music. Other times I go on this sort of trend of I find a new composer, or I find I'm researching something. So I go down this trail of really intentionally choosing certain kinds of music to listen to build my understanding and familiarity and get myself into it. Other times, whatever anyone else is playing, I enjoy it. And I guess it really depends on my activity level, what I'm doing with my work, and so forth. This brings up another question, which I don't know if I have here, but I remember it. Somebody asked, because I had mentioned, somebody asked, do you dream music very often? And yes and no. It's rare that I wake up and realize that I've had some wonderful piece of music going through my mind, because most often it's some catchy little tune which gets stuck there and my mind is turning it over and turning it over. And then sometimes the most frustrating and toughest ones are when I may have a student who's struggling with a piece of music, trying to get themselves, they're working hard, but it's just not coming together yet. And my mind is trying to figure out all the many ways I can help them. And I'll wake up in the middle of the night and realize I've had this little student tune going through my mind nonstop. And I'm like, I can't even get a break from it when I'm sleeping. So I don't dream Beethoven's Ninth very often at all. It's more to do, I think, with what my mind is trying to process and create and problem solve. I think it has a lot to do with problem solving. And and processing a new experience. So, yes, Vito B says, what I wouldn't give to hear this for the first time again. I guess I'll just have to wait for senility to kick in. And I hope that what I'm doing gives you all a chance to listen to it for the first time in a new way, at least. Even if you can never have that first time, maybe you can have a new first time, and maybe the second first time will bring you fresh enjoyment that you hadn't had before. I really hope that that's the case, and I hope that each of you get that experience. And then there's some just funny comments, which I wanted to read out because I want you all to know that I enjoy reading what you say, and sometimes we just laugh and have fun. Z Redband says, well then, if you're going to lose your rock virginity, I can't imagine anything better than to be deflowered by Freddie Mercury's incredible voice. And Vlad and I both, we just bust out laughing with that one. You made our day. Rusty Rinko says, if Jimmy Page had a daughter, she would look like you. Okay. That was kind of cute. Wayne Chesser said, I related my story of discovering this wonderful channel to my youngest daughter, who loves Pink Floyd. When I was done, she held her phone up and said, this lady? I nodded and she went, sub. LOL, excellent. So, I'm happy to know that that there are people, all of you out there, who are enjoying this enough that you feel enthusiastic about it, because I do. And I've heard in some of your comments saying, please don't rush too hard, don't overwhelm yourself, don't do something that turns you off, don't listen to too much heavy metal because I'm afraid it will turn you away. And I want to reassure you that I am enjoying the journey. I am very enthusiastic, and as you can see, I've thrown myself into it very energetically. And I'm grateful for the family support that I have that allows me to pursue these sorts of projects in the way that I like to, just wholeheartedly. And at the same time, I want to reassure you that if I feel that I need a break, or if I feel that I'm getting overwhelmed, I will do so, because I don't want to burn out. And I want this to go on for a good amount of time. I want us all to enjoy it. And Vlad is very careful. He knows me well, of course. And so he's guiding me, and he's telling me, yes, you can do this one. No, don't do this one yet. That would be too much. And so even as the channel is developing, he's still kind of the guide behind the scenes, which is helping me to not get lost in this new world. And so those are some comments and questions that I've answered. I still haven't caught up on all the old ones, but every week I hope to add a few. Please keep asking questions if you have them, and I want to answer them as openly and fully as I can. And I might not always have good answers that answer what you're really after, but this is me, this is my experience, and I'm happy to share it with you.
It was really a great experience to be together again this morning, and we really hope that we will be able to do this as often as possible. I noticed that there were some internet issues, the picture was not clear, and I know that that is frustrating. So let's think about this. Maybe we should do this. Amy answers your questions not live, but as a premiere. This is something to consider. Maybe you will share with us your thoughts. I'm just thinking that doing this, you will have a quality picture and sound, and at the same time she will be able to sit down and type while you type watching the video together. Something to consider. One other thing, well, two other things. As I said, we have some announcements to make. First, well, just I see that some of you are still writing messages. I'm not there anymore, so I can't see what you're writing. So first thing, right after we're done with this, I'm going to put up the next on Virgin Rock. So you might want to check on that because it's an interesting surprise, and I'm sure that many of you will enjoy what will come next here on Virgin Rock. And secondly, like some of you asked about this discussion that we started on the community tab about selecting questions and the coffee and all this discussion. Well, we came to a conclusion. And our decision is this. We're going to open a monthly community poll. But this is how it's going to work. The poll will include 5 bands. Each of you will get to choose one band. But then our question is this. Our request to you is this. Once you voted your band, just go down and write a comment. And in the comment, write the name of the band that you choose and the song that you would like Amy to listen. And then at the end of the month, I will see, we will all see which is the winning band. And then I will go through all the comments and I will see which is the song which was voted most, got most of the votes, and which song is also most better for Amy to go through. And so we thought about it and we came to this conclusion that doing it this way is going to be balanced and we're not going to be thrown off by just putting up one band and then a few songs, and of course that would create some difficulty. And so right after we are going to finish this live stream, I'm going to put up on the community tab this first poll. Although it's the 10th today, the 10th of September, we're going to open the poll today and it's going to be open there until the end of the month. And so at the end of the month, we will see which song, which community chosen song Amy will do next month. And so we will do this every month, and I guess it's going to be fun, and I guess it's everybody will have an input there, and the community will be able to have its own input into the songs that Amy will go through. And judging by the character of the community, the knowledge that all of you have, I know that the songs that you will choose, the winner songs, will be some of the best. Definitely some of the best.
I think it's going to be nice. You have sent us so many recommendations, both famous and obscure and everything in between, and it's a wonderful list. But it's gotten to the point where it's too much for us to go through in any reasonable amount of time. And I want to keep this community interaction. So I'm hoping that this will make it so that you can feel like you're having some input on my journey. At the same time, Vlad is still kind of making sure that it stays on track. Mm-hmm. And I am looking forward to each chosen song each month.
So in a few minutes, you will find out the next on Virgin Rock, and in a few minutes, you will be able to vote your band of your chosen band from the 5 that are going to be up there on the community tab. It was a great morning, afternoon, night, whenever you are on this planet. together, and we are looking forward for next week. We hope that the schedule and everything will allow us to be together again at the same time of Saturday morning, evening, or night. This is a great community. This is a great place. We appreciate you all very, very much. Rock and roll.
Thank you for your time, and I'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.